I'm currently at work. These are my notes, and I'm going to probably have to upload this video somewhere else because my phone and my email keeps messing up. And I'm sick and tired of trying to repeat myself only for the recording itself to fail. So let's run through this quick in a few minutes. These are my notes that I have, and I didn't show you this page because I'm still in the middle of going through each point and giving more context and details, such as iron stabilizes magnetic fields, the possible hint that the phenomenon manipulates, alters, changes, and interacts with magnetic fields, as well as the connection between negative magnetic fields or negative magnetic anomalies, to be more precise. And the reason why I say negative magnetic anomalies is because from the evidence that I've looked at from empirical scientific evidence, such as the information on this page of notes that I have shown you to some degree, not everything, but I've shown you at least this part down here, materials such as iron are known to thicken the magnetic field, or to be more precise, strengthen the magnetic field, especially around the material itself. And again, historically, through mythology and a bunch of other cultural notes, so to say, iron has been known to poison the fairies or burn the skin of the fairies or to keep demons away, so on and so forth. Iron is a disruptor. And so from that information, I was able to kind of make a theory that the phenomenon takes advantage of the magnetic field that we have around us being weak in some areas to manifest itself, and then there's a possibility that the phenomenon might be opportunistic, or the phenomenon might be creating them. Now, this is what these notes on this other page, which is like 2 pages away, are going to get into, where if the phenomenon is opportunistic, then there's a chance you could do something before the phenomenon manifests itself, because you'd be able to feel that the phenomenon is coming, because the phenomenon is possibly priming itself or priming its target, whether it's a person or a location, for it itself to be able to manifest and appear. And considering how the phenomenon doesn't stay here, I'm thinking that the phenomenon has a very limited amount of time to be able to be in our world and interact with our world before they start to lose shape, or the magnetic anomaly that they are manifesting in is going to correct itself and stabilize. And what I mean by that is thunderstorms happen when the atmosphere has instability. If the atmosphere is stable, there is no thunderstorm, because you need hot air and cold air to come together. Now, the thing about that is magnetic fields are very similar to fluids, and the atmosphere is very similar to a fluid because the atmosphere is a lower density fluid. But to continue on now, if the magnetic field is stable, you can't really manipulate anything, at least not without expending a lot of energy, which I'm very sure the phenomenon does not want to do, from what I've been hearing and seeing and reading and looking at the actual data that I could find that was empirical. But at the same time, if the atmosphere is unstable, that gives you the ability to make some changes, because now you can have bends and twists and knots. You can have some sections of the magnetic field that are literally just not very tightly packed. The thickness of the magnetic lines is called gauze, but the total magnetism in the area is called flux. So again, it gets even crazier, because you can have a scenario where people or humans are being manipulated to create technologies that artificially create these instabilities, or that artificially create negative magnetic anomalies that allow the phenomenon to actually manifest itself more often. And so in areas that are like scientific research stations that basically create these anomalies, I don't know, maybe like CERN or something, you could have a scenario where like artificial gateways, for lack of better words, are being made, and no one would be the wiser, because either no one knows the science or no one would really know what to look for. And so you can have things that are like stepping out of CERN, as an example. I'm using CERN as an example because it's the only thing I can think of right now. But to continue on though, if it's a scenario where a negative magnetic anomaly is not necessary, or if it's a scenario where an instability is not necessary, then they're creating the door. Then in that case, there's almost no way to even know or predict. Or by predict, I don't mean like know where they're going to be 5 years from now. I mean like there's no way to even know when they're about to show up, because they would just create something on their own. And these two scenarios are like the nice scenarios, because there's a third scenario where they're doing something else entirely, and at that point, just I don't know. I don't know, okay? But I haven't seen evidence for that so far, which is a thankfully. And the reason why I say thankfully is because right now we have EMF detectors and other type of magnetic detecting technology, whatever, that does pick up something. So yeah, that's a technical godsend, if you want to put it like that. But another thing is that on this page, it goes into detail that If they are using magnetism, or not necessarily using magnetism, but if magnetism is affecting them, then you can have a scenario where when they peer through the veil, they can appear to us. Again, they can appear to us in a form that we call an apparition. And that apparition would basically be a projection of themselves, because apparently they themselves can't be here, whoever they are. You know, maybe a big head honcho shows up in the world. I don't know. I don't know if that's even a thing. But the same way we have bodies that we navigate in, it's like they either want bodies or it's a requirement or something. I'm not sure. I'm still working on a lot of the science, and eventually I'm going to have to throw math equations at you. Eventually I'm going to have to throw math equations at you, because the more and more I want to look for scientific empirical evidence and put up more scientific empirical data, the more and more I have to go toward mathematical equations, and I'm going to have to start throwing them at you eventually. But again, this would basically be a scenario where the apparition can be a literal, real thing, real in the sense of, if the phenomenon appears as a lion, it would look like a lion, feel like a lion, smell like a lion, and it would even bleed like a lion. The problem is it would have no soul. And what I mean by that is a lion can create its own input. In other words, a lion can choose whether it wants to poop or sleep or run around and hunt an animal. However, the apparition that takes the appearance of a lion doesn't have a soul, because it's not real. Something else is creating that apparition and making the apparition move around. Think of it as like a lion on puppet strings, which is the apparition, versus a lion, which is an actual lion. And in this scenario, it would basically be something that looks real and interacts with our world and leaves footprints behind and everything, but it could just disappear out of thin air and you would never know. And that leaves the question, if that were to be the case, how many other things would actually be doing that? How many other things in our world? How many cars? How many planes? How many pots? How many plants? How many phones? How many cups? How many mugs? How many silverware like forks and spoons? How much stuff would be so real to us, but in reality be fake? And then not only that, it would be basically projection. But it would be projection through manipulating the properties of the world we live in, which is the essential core of sorcery. And in that sense, you could call them sorcerers. You can call them projection sorcerers. Literally, like you could call this magic. You can call this sorcery. And it's not magic where you like have like a little stick in your mouth and you swirl around a gunk in a pot. It's magic as in like you're screwing with the fundamental laws and tweaking our reality, which is a thing, because when you get into the actual particle physics, you learn that there's a lot of zeros and ones like a computer programming. Not only that, but everything here is probabilistic, meaning that it's not certain, meaning that there's something thinking. Something is thinking. But there's more. There's more. There is more. One of the ways that you can do this is by manipulating electricity and magnetism, or the electric field and magnetic field, which is electromagnetism, which gets into radio frequencies and waves, which can be disrupted by iron and other things, so on and so forth. But it could lead to a scenario where if someone is smart enough or someone is able to build the technology, they could create a hologram or an illusion that's so real you would believe it's real. A person, a human, could walk up to you. You know, you could talk to them, hug them, that you could eat, watch them chew the food and drool. But at the same time, they could like disappear when you turn around to look at the counter and pay for the dinner at like Wendy's, and then turn back, they're just gone. And that can lead to scenarios where you have phenomena like plasma, which we know for a fact is easily manipulated by magnetic fields. Hint, hint, like these little orbs of light, so on and so forth. That could be blue balls of light or purple balls of light. And on top of that, they can have other phenomenon that would basically take the appearance of like a orb of light walking into someone's room, and the orb of light in someone's room could just shapeshift into like an alien gray or Nordic or reptilian. It could shapeshift, and the person experiencing this would be none the wiser. And when it comes to the person who's experiencing this, seeing all this stuff, but someone else in the room seeing absolutely nothing, you could polarize light, which is basically it's filtering light to be very, very refined in structure. That's like the most simple way I can put this. So the person that's experiencing this at a certain angle is literally getting the visuals and the audio, because light's electromagnetic frequency. However, at the same time, someone else in the room could be hearing nothing or seeing nothing. And depending on how the phenomenon manifests itself, you can have a scenario where someone's in their bed, they scream, "Ah, there's a monster! Ah, there's a pterodactyl! Ah, there's a T-Rex in my room!" The parents or, maybe the girlfriend runs up like, "What's happening? What's happening?" There's nothing there. But you could have things like, some lights that are appearing different to the girl, but they appear completely indifferent to the shape of a T-Rex to the person experiencing this horror. And then there are these phenomena where you have people experiencing severe, overwhelming fear with the phenomenon. Well, there's a thing called ultrasound or ultra low frequencies, which can be both, light but also sound. And whenever a human hears these things, it can literally promote fear. And again, ultra low frequencies, if you go back to iron, it can absorb low frequencies because, again, as I said in another video, the low frequencies themselves can pass through the iron way more easily than the high frequencies. That goes into the particle physics and the probability, so on and so forth. But that can heat up the iron itself. So imagine a pastor or a preacher or a reverend in his church, a demon appears to him. The reverend's like, "Oh, sweet Jesus," he's holding his cross and he's feeling the fear, the low frequencies, which eventually get absorbed by the iron to a certain extent and heat up the iron, causing the iron to, again, get warm. And then if there's enough of it, the iron can start to burn him and he throws it away. Oh, right? That's an actual thing that can happen with scientific data that's empirical, but it gets even crazier. Whew. If you have a phenomenon manifesting as plasma, that plasma itself can shapeshift by manipulating its own magnetic field. And this is because even if the plasma itself is an apparition, the apparition has to be controlled by someone or something that's choosing to appear. And in doing so, you can have the magnetic field be manipulated to get the apparition of the plasma in any form or any shape it wants to. And it can change and tweak the light to change colors to our visible spectrum range. You can even do this to make it outside of our visible spectrum, like ultraviolet or infrared, so on and so forth. There's a lot you could do. There is a stupid amount of things you can do if you were to have that much refined control over the world we live in. And again, we live in a world that we only see 3D stuff, and that's only a slice of something else. Like, that's a whole other conversation. There is so much. But then you get into rituals and magic, and rituals themselves aren't some spooky dookie put on a robe and do this. Rituals, I'm gonna give you a short rundown, but I'm gonna have to write that out too. Rituals are an arbitrary set of criteria that are performed in a specific order with the intent of getting something done. And in doing something repetitively in a specific manner to get something done, you set a standard. And with physics and quantum physics, when you set a standard, you make it more true. And the more true you make it, the more probable you make it. So yes, there is an actual thing to rituals, and the more you do a ritual, the more meaning and value it has. And that gets into incantations, which are like audio versions of like getting up and brushing your teeth every day. And then you can have writing and sigils, which are just visual versions of getting up and brushing your teeth every single day. And you got to understand, our entire language system is built off of sigils. Letters are sigils, literally. At the very least, at the very bare minimum, every language on this planet got their stuff from the Canaanites. I'm sure there were probably other people and other places everywhere else, but when it comes to what we know for sure, when it comes to working with what everybody agrees with in the history books, the Canaanites gave everybody their language, because everybody's language is just a small variation of the Canaanites. If you go look at the Canaanites and go look at the languages down the line, you will see it for yourself. Now, it gets a little crazier though, because again, everybody, or at least almost everybody, has their stuff from the Canaanites. The Canaanites were building temples that look like computer parts where you do processes. A computer does a process is a ritual. A computer does a ritual over and over and over and over. In a temple, you have people doing rituals over and over and over and over. The blueprints of the temples look like computer part blueprints. There is a lot that goes into this, and my phone is about to die, so I'm going to end it right here because I don't want my phone to die and I need it to finish my work for the rest of the day. There is so much going on. There is so much going on. And not only that, but there is a disturbing fixation on the human soul. And I'm suggesting it's because the human soul is a way to produce energy in a world where you don't really get that. Because the human body is like a robot, our body has mechanical movements, we can only move in certain ways and degrees, so on and so forth at the same time. What are the rest of my notes do I have? Hold on real quick. We have food like chips, potato chips. The computers have chips. We take a bite out of food, a bite out of a burger. A computer has bites. We have cookies, right? From store, chocolate chip, macadamia nut, oatmeal raisin. There are cookies in a computer, especially your website cookies when you visit google.com or YouTube, right? Apartments for homes. We have compartments for computers. They are small built structures that are similar. You have a main structure with smaller substructures inside of it. It's fractal. Both an apartment is fractal and a compartment is fractal. You have human resources, computer resources. You have resources referring to the humans, like how many soldiers we have, how many workers we have, so on and so forth. Computer resources, how much RAM, how much whatever, right? Our bodies are organic machines, robots are synthetic machines. You could look at the human body completely differently, and then you put something in the human body to drive it. You put something in the human body to do work. Our brain produces electricity. When we produce electricity, usually the earth balances out the electricity. That's why you have this thing called grounding with your feet. But when you have like rubber soles, S-O-L-E-S on your shoe, you have a rubber sole at the bottom of your shoe, you can't put the electricity back into the earth. So the electricity has to go somewhere else. You become electrically charged. And when you're electrically charged, that charge can be taken from you. Dr. Carla Turner talked about a scenario where she felt just completely drained, like someone flipped a switch. You could say that she had a charge taken from her. Why or how? I have absolutely no clue. I'm just working with what I have and then making a theory. I'm working with empirical scientific data that I have available to me, and from that empirical scientific data, I am literally making theories that stick to the data or hug that data closely. And then there are other things like our entire society is structured. It is like that episode of Rick and Morty where Rick had to do something with his car or his, flying spaceship, whatever. So when he went to go check on the battery, you found out that it was an entire civilization of people that built all their cultures and all their norms around what was producing energy for Rick. And then whenever Rick came down into the battery to see how things were doing, they were calling Rick a god or an alien or whatever. Bro, it's so, oh my gosh. For now, I'm gonna leave it alone, because I gotta take care of work, but that's just the summary, okay? That's just the summary. Again, this is a rough draft. I gotta go through all this. That takes a lot of time because I now have to write on paper because the computer's not working for me. A computer is not working. I now have to write on paper. When a computer works, or when I can find a way to get a computer to work, I'll do that. But for now, I have to write on paper, okay? I just have to write on paper for now. Thank you. See you. Have a good day. Whatever else. Bye. One last thing. Maybe the Earth's magnetic field that we have surrounding our entire planet is protecting us. And the closer you get to the surface of the Earth, the thicker the magnetic field is. And the thicker the magnetic field is, the harder it is for you to manifest yourself as something else coming from someplace else, right? Maybe, possibly. That could explain why there's so many stories and so many claims and so many statements about aliens or monsters being on the moon. It's because the moon is like the closest thing you have as a satellite, a satellite to watch the Earth, right? What is a satellite? A satellite is technology used to watch the Earth or something. I'm making sure my boss isn't coming in here, because if my boss is here, you might get pissed off. But a satellite sends signals and receives signals, and it reads and interprets signals. The moon is a satellite. And the moon is really, really far away from the Earth's magnetic field. Not only that, but there are stories of stuff coming through an eclipse, because an eclipse could be like a doorway. Well, there are notes in science of how the moon disturbs the magnetic field of the Earth greatly. The moon produces a massive disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field because it blocks the solar wind, so on and so forth. And as a result of that, again, that's a magnetic anomaly. That's a magnetic disturbance. That's a really big hole. Something can come through. Something can fly through. As a matter of fact, I experienced the eclipse myself alongside a lot of people, and everybody said the eclipse felt super weird. It felt like there was no protection, or it felt like everything was gone. It felt like we were in a completely different world during that entire eclipse. Again, I literally have videos and photos of the eclipse if you want that. And then not only that, but the sun has coronal discharges, not as in necessarily solar flares, but when you have electrical discharges, even on smaller things on Earth that look like coronal discharges, you get things that look like the sun's corona. There's a lot. There's a lot. So that whole painting, I forgot whether it was a Greek painting or a Roman painting or an Italian painting. I don't know, where you have this dude inside of a dome, and then when he peeks his head out of the dome, you see machine parts and stuff. That's a proof of concept, or that's a concept that's describing a lot of things. But for now, I'm going to leave it alone because there's a lot. There's a lot, and I got to get to work. It's like, what, I don't know, almost time for me to go, if not past that time. So this is what I got for you now. I'll let you know later. Stretching. Thank you. See you. Have a good day and bye. Again, don't take this as 100% correct terminology. This is a rough draft. This is an approximation. This is an estimation. I'm putting all the pieces together eventually. But yeah, that'll be about it. So you know, just these are just ideas. This is a rough draft.